Welcome everybody. I am delighted to be here to just say hello and to introduce the RCSLT webinar on advanced practice. It is a pleasure to be here to do this, to talk about this very innovative work. Can I have the next slide, please? For those that don't know me, I'm Judith Broll. I'm the Director of Professional Development at RCSLT and a speech and language therapist by background. I'm just going to be topping and tailing this webinar, and I'm delighted that we have not only colleagues from RCSLT, but also from Coventry and Salford universities who are working very closely with us to try and make something very bespoke for speech and language therapy in this space, and from NHS England. So we'd like to welcome all colleagues onto this call today, which is being recorded for those that can't join us in person. Just a bit of housekeeping before we get going. We have Justina and Hannah in the background, our RCSLT colleagues, to help if you've got any technical issues. We would ask that any questions you have go into the Q&A through the Q&A button. And I appreciate we've had a lot of questions already, which are going to be put to our speakers at the end of this webinar. Just to say that any questions of yours that are not going to be answered today, we know this is the beginning of a journey looking at how we work in this space. So if they're not answered immediately, please don't fret. We will absolutely be able to get back to you at a later date. So after this, the quick Q&A and all the links will be on our website and the presentation slides. So with no further ado, I think we'll go to the next slide now. And just to remind us what it is that we are here to do today. Really, I think this work has been ongoing for a wee while, but we've just been given some money by NHS England to really front load us to get going with it, to ensure that speech and language therapy have a really clear framework in which to look at enhanced and advanced practice. We're going to see how that fits in with other bits of work that we are delivering across RCSLT and discover how apprenticeships, enhanced practice and advanced practice are all linked through. And if I might also add consultant, but that's not for today's webinar. We're going to find out about enhanced practice and why RCSLT are engaging with it and what that would mean for you on the ground as clinicians, and to gain clarity around advancing practice, and especially with non-prescribing professionals and those that don't really meet the typical medical model that most AAP courses deliver at the moment. But that's about to change, as you'll hear more of as we go through this webinar. We know that this at the moment is being driven by England, but we are very mindful that we are working very closely across all 4 nations in this space, and hopefully we'll hear more about that later as well. And then it's really just making sure that everybody and colleagues and members are being brought along on the journey with us. So that's what we're going to achieve in the next hour. And to start that off, I'm going to introduce you to my colleague Sally. If we could go to the next slide, please. So Sally Cochrane is our wonderful programme manager on the NHSE England specification guide for the year. And I'm going to hand over to her now just to tell us a little bit about how this project fits in with this wider picture. So thank you, Sally.
Thanks, Judith, and hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Can we have the next slide, please? So as Judith said, I'm overseeing the NHSE funded programme of work, which is supporting the ongoing education reform priorities in allied health professions, into which this advancing practice piece of work fits. So this 12-month programme, into which we are now somehow halfway, aims to help ensure an effective supply of AHPs, including speech and language therapists, of course, supporting transition into the workforce and providing career development opportunities throughout, all contributing to improved work satisfaction and increased retention to realise the goals of strategic plans such as the NHS long-term workforce plan. Next slide, please. So the programme themes are broad, as you can see, and many of these are similar across both RCSLT's programme of work and that of the other AHPs that have been commissioned by NHS England. So the aims and the outputs of this 12-month piece of work span across the educator workforce, so that's both academic and practice educators, career pathways into the profession, the curriculum itself, the support workforce, NQPs and preceptorship support, plus the embedding and evaluation of the professional development framework, about which many of you are probably now familiar. And for RCSLT, in addition to the broader spec outputs, which are similar to the AHPs, our profession-specific priorities include work around paediatric dysphagia, developing a case for change to allow SLTs more clinical authority, initiatives to address paediatric waiting lists, and the promotion of roles in the justice sector. So this is a very, very top-line overview of the programme workstream themes, and more information is available on our programme webpage, and that's got more detail on each of those delivery strands and project-specific work, plus any updates of how you can get involved. And these opportunities are also included in the fortnightly e-newsletter when they come up. However, the star of today's show is career development and advancing practice, so we'll be focusing on that, and I will now hand back over to Will.
Hi everyone, thank you, Sally. So you've all come here to talk about enhanced and advanced practice today, but I did just want to touch on some of the other projects that we're working on within the programme, with the NHSE programme as well, specifically the NQP journey or newly qualified practitioner journey. The next slide, please. So as we all know, having a clear career pathway is really, really important. It encourages staff to develop their skills, progress, and also encourages that retention as well by having a clear pathway, knowing where they can go and what they can do, what they need to do to achieve the next step. So one pathway in particular that's become apparent, starting with NHS start colleagues on the whole, is the NQP Enhanced, Advanced and Consultant pathway. You can see that image at the top there. We have tried to align ourselves with this because we want this to be an option with not just the medical model, not just within the NHS colleagues. We want these to be available across all clinical areas as well. So we've aligned our professional development framework with this as well. You can see foundation, proficient, enhanced, advanced, and expert. So in a way, you could look at the foundation as the NQP level. You've got your enhanced, your advanced, and then potentially expert as consultant. So as the college, we've recognised this importance of that career pathway, of this continuum. And we've been looking at how we can adapt our current NQP goal process to fit into this, to create that continuum. So we've had a working group, 4 different sessions with 4 different groups, and then we've got a virtual development group as well. And we're working on how we can adapt the process, as I say, to fit into the professional development framework. So the most recent suggestion has been adapting the NQP process to basically fit into the foundation aspect of the professional development framework. So for example, what someone may do, and the NQP may do, is select 10 competencies from foundation level and choose those to focus on as their NQP goals. We think this is really positive, having that constant familiarization with the framework. You can use this framework and only one framework to go from NQP all the way to consultant. And we think that's important. It creates familiarity. It stops you from jumping from different frameworks, potentially forgetting about what they've done, forgetting certain details, but it also enables that NQP to go, I need to achieve X, Y, Z to be able to get to the stage of my career that I want to get to, wherever that may be. So we are continuing to work on this. We are in the virtual development stage group. We're sending out mail shots to different clinicians, different members of the group to get their thoughts and feedback. If you still want to be part of that, you can be part of that. So just let me know separately and we can add you to that group. Could I next slide, please? So now I want to hand over to Kim Stewart and Louise Henstock. We've been working with Kim and Louise on multiple different projects, but this one we're going to focus on enhanced practice. So Kim and Louise have developed, I believe, 10 enhanced practice schemas so far. So they're leading it all, and they're also doing more as we talk. So I'll hand over to Kim and Louise for their part on this. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. And it's great to join you today to explore enhanced practice with you. Next slide, please. So we thought we'd start by just sharing with you some of the work that we did as part of our innovation partnership between Coventry and Salford University. And we originally looked across 7 AHP professions to develop the model curricula and schema for enhanced practice. Whilst this project was really focused on England in terms of the deliverables, we actually made sure that we explored enhanced practice across all of our nations. And as part of that, thought about where this sits within that career journey that Will just shared with you earlier. Having looked at all of the information around enhanced practice, building on the work of Alison Leary that was very much early thinking around this, we've looked at all of those 4 nations and really considered what does it mean to be really thinking about enhanced level practice. And for us, what we've looked at it's about an intersect between mastery and expertise. So if you take a look at that diagram to the right-hand side, what we've really tried to capture here is the essence of enhanced level practice is really about profession-specific mastery. And when we describe it, we talk about this is about being the best version of a speech and language therapist or an AHP in any of those professions that you can be. So really deepening your understanding, your application of the knowledge, skills and behaviours are really relevant to your professional practice as that AHP. But that works at the intersect of really deepening that knowledge across a specific speciality or pathway. And that's where the expertise comes to really the fore of this. So enhanced practice is about building profession-specific depth and mastery of practice within specific expertise and specialities. And that can be from generalist to specialist. So the hallmarks of enhanced level practice really are about demonstrating depth of knowledge to support complex decision making, and that you're working with that expert clinical competence and judgment within a specific area of practice. Now, we know as AHPs we are autonomous on registration, but what's really important is that we follow our scope of practice as we move through developing our expertise and experience. And at this level of practice, our autonomy is really about exercising expert judgment within that profession-specific area of practice. And in doing so, you are exercising criticality of thought and action in drawing on evidence, evaluating evidence that informs your practice as a speech and language therapist. As part of all of our work, we've encompassed all 4 pillars of professional life, and therefore enhanced practice is really about deepening that application of those 4 pillars of education, of leadership, of research and of clinical practice. And in doing so, we're using all of those evaluative approaches to interpret and synthesize information, managing and leading complex situations in practice that are profession specific, but in a particular pathway. And we recognise that we continue to develop our leadership journey right from starting to become a registrant all the way through up to those levels of consultant practice. But at an enhanced practice level, what we're talking about is developing as a situational leader. And that means where we have to work as registrants without authority and with authority. So really thinking about the influencing skills that are so vital in our professions within particular pathways and expertise. Next slide, please. So what we developed as part of our innovation partnership and how we set out our model curriculars is that there are 8 core domains of enhanced level practice that sit across all professions. And these really reflect those 4 pillars of practice. So we have 2 for clinical practice, 2 for leadership, 2 for education, and 2 for research. They capture what it means that people need to demonstrate when working at an enhanced level of practice. They broadly cover what it is that will really help people to demonstrate that level of expertise and mastery within a particular area of practice as a registrant within a particular profession. What we also did as part of our work was had 2 further domains of enhanced level practice that really capture what it is for that particular profession. So 2 further domains really concentrate on that profession-specific priorities that are really driving the workforce within that profession. What was also really important was that the language that sits beneath the framework is reflective of your profession. So in our model curricula and schema, you will see that there is each a curricula for those professions written with the words, the voice, and the identity that reflects that profession. Because what we absolutely have to commit to is that enhanced level practice is about developing your profession, yourself, with your expertise in a particular setting. So I'm going to hand over to Louise now.
Thanks, Kim. Next slide, please. So thinking about the National Schema and Model Curricula, what we wanted to really identify was the distinction between the level of academic level of academia and the level of practice. And those are two separate entities, and they're often a little bit blurred and confused. So just to give an example, you can be qualified at a pre-reg master's level, which is level 7, but when you start in employment, you will be in that preceptorship phase. So just having level 7 study does not equate to a level of practice. When we did write this National Schema and Model Curricula, though, what we absolutely have seen across AHPs is that we anticipate that this will be delivered by providers at level 7. So there's a level of academic study that will be required and a level of practice that we've tried to define within this National Schema and Model Curricula. The requirements of the apprenticeship, so there are different routes for which you can go through the enhanced practice. One would be through the apprenticeship and one would be through the non-apprenticeship route. And it's thinking about what the distinction is between those in terms of do you want to go down an apprenticeship route or do you want to go down a non-apprenticeship route? There is no mandated credits for this award, so it doesn't have to be credit bearing, and there might be people who say don't want to have credit bearing in this study. But one of the things that we need employers to think about is the roles and the requirements that would be, or the opportunities that need to be available for people who want to work at an enhanced level practice. So as part of the requirement for the apprenticeship, as any apprenticeship would be, you need to have work-based mentors. And absolutely there needs to be, and there is written into the National Schema and Model Curricula, a section about work-based mentors and the support that needs to be there in place for people. They need to have access to learning opportunities within and beyond their immediate role. So that work and the level of practice needs to be consolidated, both off the job, but also on the job as well. The clinical supervision needs to meet the range of occupational competencies, and that's really about individual job roles and requirements, and that needs to be driven by the workforce, driven by the employer as to what is required to serve your patients and populations. And then obviously signing off as part of the apprenticeship is signing off the occupational competence in that workplace. Kim and I have been involved in RPEL and apprenticeship training plans, but as part of that, there will be launched by NHSC fairly soon a document about RPEL. So for those of you who don't know, RPEL is I can't think what it stands for now in the acronym.
Recognition of prior learning and experience.
Sorry, rushing from one thing. So recognition of prior experiential learning. So recognising that people may have prior experiential learning that they've got, and recognising how that sits within the skill set and level of practice that you have. We need to be really clear on the distinction between enhanced and advanced level practice. And we also need to make clear that HEIs that are developing that, and Kim and I have done several national webinars now for HEIs across professional bodies, that there is a difference between enhanced and advanced level programs, and those two can't just be merged together. It's a different level of practice that goes along a continuum. So we need to be aware of that. And then the last point, which has just disappeared off my screen. I can't see the last point. It's disappeared off the bottom of my screen. Can you see it?
Yeah, it's about the endpoint assessment being valued by everyone.
Endpoint assessment. So the endpoint assessment for the apprenticeship standard for enhanced level practice actually sits outside. So it's a what we'd call a non-integrated endpoint assessment. And the non-integrated endpoint assessments means that you would go through that 365 days as a minimum as part of the apprenticeship. And you have to do that as a minimum to reach the endpoint assessment. The endpoint assessment non-integrated, but it needs to be a real part and is seen and valued by all parties within that apprenticeship. So that's the employer, the employee, the work-based mentor, and the HEI or the provider of that education. So the endpoint assessment is a real part of, and it needs to be valued as part of the apprenticeship. So hopefully that's a real quick whistle-stop tour of the national schema and model curricula that has been provided for enhanced practice. Thanks, Will. I'm going to hand back to you now.
Great, thank you very much, Louise. It's amazing working with both of them. It's incredible working with lots of projects together. Really, really enjoy it as well. So thank you. So now just to quickly touch in on what we're doing at the RCSLT. So as you might have established from that conversation there as well, we are working with Salford and Coventry University to develop the enhanced practice schema. We're in the very early stages of this, but when we get going, we will be reaching out to members to get involved, to help us and support us on this journey. We want to be aligned with all other allied health professionals when it comes to this, well, all other health and care professionals in all honesty, but in particular allied health professionals. So there is an existing allied health professional schema document which came from NHS England, and we will be added to this. So they'll do such a version 2. We'll be added to it, and then we will be treated as equal and the same level of all others. Okay, next slide, if that's okay, please. So just touching on what Louise was just saying, and interesting as well, about recognising the difference between enhanced and advanced practice. We're getting this question a lot, what is the difference? And I think overall we have to accept there are similarities as well as differences. It's not uncommon for there to be similarities between levels of practice. If you look at advanced and consultant level practice, there are similarities here as well, but there are differences. So this table here does show those differences. I'm looking at it here and the text is far too small, I assume, for everybody. So I am sorry about that. I will make sure I send this out private, I send this out afterwards as well. But basically the key differences this demonstrates is looking at things such as risk, so autonomy with risk, support with risk and dealing with that, but also the depth of knowledge and the breadth of knowledge as well. So in enhanced, we'd expect you to really have the specific knowledge in one clinical area and be really, really highly skilled within that. Whereas with advanced, we'd expect you to have that within that specific clinical area. But in addition, you're considering the wider health and care settings as well, understanding these and how these may impact on your service, on your professional life as well. So next slide, please. So now we'll move on to advanced practice. I understand that was quite quick on enhanced, but we will be doing some more work on this, to look out for more work on enhanced practice. But moving on to advanced, we'll now have a discussion about this. Can we to the next slide? Sorry. So I'm assuming everyone here has heard of advanced practice, but what we'd expect from someone who's working at advanced practice is to be a leader, to be an educator, a highly skilled clinician, and as we just mentioned, having that understanding of the wider health and care system. Not only does an advanced practitioner have the clinical skills, they also part educating the team. They're promoting a culture of learning within the team as well, encouraging their staff to go out, do extra courses, look for CPD opportunities as well. As well as this, there's the expectation to engage in research. It's about engaging in this research, understanding what this research means, taking the best practice from this research and then transferring that to your service or to your practice. From this research, we ensure that all quality, safety, productivity, and cost effectiveness is at the best level it can possibly be. Some other notes there on these slides. Once again, we will share these around, so don't feel like you've got to read them all now. Could I have the next slide, please? So what we'd expect from somebody who is working at the advanced level, first of all, we wouldn't expect them to go from newly qualified practitioner all the way to advanced. We'd really expect somebody to be working at enhanced for roughly 5 years before starting your journey on enhanced. By this stage, you'll have developed your skills, you'll have gained experience, and you'll feel confident and established within your role. This is really important, so then when you do move on to the next step, it's not such a shock and you don't have that sort of those feelings of, oh, are you good enough yet? Are you ready for this? Hopefully by waiting this length of time, you do feel prepared and you do feel ready to go ahead. So overall, there are multiple ways to reaching advanced level of practice. These have varied significantly over the years, and more recently, there's 3 key methods of reaching it. This includes the level 7, Advanced Clinical Practice Apprenticeship. It includes the MSc Advanced Clinical Practice degree, and it also includes the e-portfolio method, which we can look at as the retrospective method. This is done sort of based on evidence that you've submitted throughout the years, evidence working towards all 4 pillars of practice, which Kim briefly mentioned earlier on as well. So each 4 pillars of practice, so the 4 pillars of practice are relevant for any method of reaching advanced practice. You have to demonstrate your ability that you're working towards, or at least the level of advanced on each of these levels, each of these pillars. By no means do we expect you to be completely equal on all. We don't expect someone who's focusing on clinical work as high maybe in their education or their research, but we do expect them to have at least a certain level or working towards some advanced competencies on each of these pillars. Could you have the next slide, please? So, and now I wanted to introduce Beverly Harden and Katie Cooper. I'm hoping they've had a chance to join the call. We've kind of double booked them in a way. They're in Isle of Wight at the moment, so they've really kindly dropped out of that to come and join us as well. So I'm hoping Beverly and Katie have joined now.
Hi, Will, we're here.
Amazing. Thanks, Bev.
No problem, no problem. So thank you for inviting us, Will, and it's completely our fault, or my fault, actually. It's nothing to do with Katie. Katie's rescued me, Will. I'm on the Isle of Wight on a site visit, and I've just had the most fabulous conversation with Carrie, who's the lead speech and language therapist over here, saying, what do you want me to tell everybody? So the key thing here from the speech and language therapy perspective, and I'll ask Katie to come in with the more sort of real life challenges of how we make things happen. And Katie works alongside me in NHS England and is an allied health professional, but leading multi-professional work. So the speech and language therapy conundrum is that as autonomous practitioners, as you graduate, moving through with the levels of practice, and you think about enhanced being what that band 6 needs to learn. What's the specialism that you want to learn as a band 6? It might be very generic. It might be about dysphagia. It might be about children. It could be whatever it needs to be. So that's where you think about enhanced practice, building your core specialism. Advanced practice, because we are autonomous practitioners and we move from novice to expert through the continuum of our learning. The real challenge for us is people then think, well, I don't know how to define advanced practice, because we often have a very nursing definition in our minds about what on earth advanced practice is. And for us, it is different. And for us, it is the exquisite synthesis of those 4 pillars of practice, but in driving that highly complex work that so many of us do, but often with a different job title than advanced practice. So there's several things the profession needs to think about, and this is the work that the college are doing with us. The first piece of work we need to be really clear about is, can we be really clear about exactly what advanced practice looks like in speech and language therapy? And that is what we need to pull off together, is a really clear suite of different examples, definitions, case studies, personas. Doesn't matter what it is, but what it does is sorry, that's the air ambulance landing, I think. But it's going to be really clear about what it is that you do when you are a speech and language therapist working in advanced practice role, and the value that you add into that. And that's unchallengeable. The issue is we've got to say it, we've got to point it out, and we've got to be really clear in the health economic benefit, because the business cases you've got to put in for the job roles are going to have to make the case for why this job is going to be saving the organisation money, improving patient experience, improving patient outcomes, whatever it may be. The second thing we've got to do is to make sure that service managers understand how they could create these jobs, how they might bid for them, how they might be able to craft the business case to underpin them as both training roles and then as advanced practice roles afterwards. Really important part. There's no point training somebody for whom there is no job. And that doesn't always have to be new money coming in. It might be how you've changed and moved around monies that you've got access to, or new development monies coming in. But we are small departments. It's really hard to do that level of flexibility often. So clever business cases and working within your AHP family and wider teams is absolutely important, because your advanced practice speech therapy role may actually save money in somebody else's clinical pathway and be positioned in somebody else's clinical pathway, but that's where you need to do your activity. It might be that your work is delivering within education, as in schools, whereby you are then saving huge money on the long term to society by the impact that you're having with children in school, but actually that then may need to be funded by another third party, local authority, whatever it may be. So some real challenges, but working with the college, we've got to start making this case available for you so that you've got access to different resources you can pull upon to help you make the case, but also to be brave enough that you're not the only person doing this in town. And the third thing we've got to do together is to make sure that there is meaningful education and training available. And Katie will talk a little bit to this in a moment, but working very closely with Judith and Will and the team around the model of care that's in the head of a speech and language therapist is very different to the model of care that may be sitting in the mindset of an acute facing nurse, allied health professional, whomever. And we need to make sure there is education and training that is truly meaningful to you. So very, very important working with universities. We don't want every university that delivers speech and language therapy running the advanced practice program. We will never have the numbers coming through for that. We need one brilliant, either English or better still UK provider running amazing opportunities for people that we are then able to fund. And Katie will talk in terms of that. We have the funding. That's not the issue in England. The issue for us is having the right training that gives you exactly what you need to do brilliance that you need to do within your clinical roles. So that's the tripartite piece of work that we have all got to pull off together as a community, and we are absolutely committed to that. The key for us now is driving the work with Kim and with Louise and with the college to really be able to make that case. And across the allied health professions, clearly all the allied health professions professional bodies are working closely together. Katie and her colleague Nick are really helping and supporting that narrative, but also working with the chief allied health professions officers across Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland and England, but also colleagues in the Republic of Ireland and now globally, really clear about our strength is together in making the case for advanced practice defined by allied health professionals for allied health professionals, and in this context, speech and language therapists by speech and language therapists. So I'm going to stop at that point. Katie, thank you so much for joining me. Katie knows far more than I do about everything to do with advanced practice. I'm going to hand on to Katie for a 5-minute deep dive into the reality of making it happen. Katie, thank you so much. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Judith.
Thanks, Beverly. Yeah, thanks everyone. So from our point of view, so I'm one of the regional faculty leads for advancing practice in the east of England. So the first thing you should be aware of is that there are 7 of us all across England. You have faculties within each of your patches who live and breathe advanced practice. We are happy to be your first point of contact if you have questions or queries. For our current workforce, so one of the things that we do discuss is that we always have to think about this from 2 points of view. Our current advanced practice workforce and our future advanced practice workforce. For those potentially who are on the course and you're not sure, as Beverly said, that there's a lot of people who may be in and working at the level of advanced practice but not having the title. One of the easiest ways of kind of looking and refining that is to look at the more professional framework for advancing practice, look at the 4 pillars and the 38 capabilities and map yourself against that and have that conversation with your organisational lead to go, are you fulfilling all of those? The main thing from NHS England was that, so it was 2017 with the framework, it is about having that underpinning education and training and the competencies and capabilities. So it does need to either have an accredited master's, advanced practice master's underpinning that, or if you're already in these roles, you can use the e-portfolio route. So again, these are fully funded routes from the national programme and the regional faculties that you can access, but you need to be speaking with your line managers to make sure that you are supported by your organisation and you've got the roles to be able to move into. So if you're not sure, the Centre for Advancing Practice is probably the first place to look to, first of all, access where you can get training and funding. There is plenty of funding to support new trainees coming through. What Beverly has touched on is actually it's that governance of the roles and it's the understanding of the roles. So one of the first questions that came through is advanced clinical practice the same as advanced practice? Yes. What we know is that advanced clinical practice in some organisations has been seen very close to that medical model. It's almost been turned into a job role. And certainly from the more professional framework point of view, we are changing the title of that and removing the clinical because of that, because we saw that actually it was potentially hindering that growth across all of the professions. Because what we need to look at is what is the professional identity of everyone working at advanced level practice, and that's what we're helping and working through with all the professional bodies. We're not medical substitutes. We are professionals in our own right. We have unique skill sets, and it's how do we bring that modern scope of practice at an advanced level, and it's developing that together. So as a regional faculty point of view, the national team, we're spending a lot of time talking to organisations, ICB, advanced practice leads. So actually there is a wider understanding of the breadth and scope of these roles and that it's not necessarily that medical substitute. So we are looking at those case studies. We are looking at kind of developing almost job descriptions, job plans, quite generic, but then can be adapted depending upon your pathways of care. When we then look at how do we get the business case for this, it's starting to think about where are your gaps in service. Don't go straight to advanced practice. Go to that step higher. So what we look at with the prioritisation framework is where are your waiting lists on your pathways? Are you meeting national, international best practice guidelines? Are there complaints or blockages? Where can advanced practice roles really make that impact? So actually, what is the service need is the first place to look. Then you then go from an advanced practice point of view over those 4 pillars of clinical expertise, leadership and management, research and service improvement, and education and training. How would these roles embedded really make that impact? And then how do you get the buy-in from the wider organisation? So from an educational point of view, we are looking at, we have over 155 accredited advanced practice programmes. Majority, as you might be seen as that advanced practice, it's not unique and specific to the profession as it currently stands. Doesn't mean you can't use that. What I would say is what you need is to have a very clear scope of practice and job plan beforehand, so that as you move through that programme, then you have the clinical supervisors to ensure you have the competence and capabilities for your scope of practice. That's really key. But what we do recognise is that we do need to start looking at the education provision. So what is the unique skills and what is the specific training required of advanced practice? To make sure that we have that education provision. And as I said, we are trying to look at that from a UK-wide perspective, not just an England perspective, because these have to be financially viable to our organisations. From a governance point of view, all I would say is that if you're in these roles, you need to make sure that you have clear competencies and capabilities that are underpinned and signed yearly from your professional liability point of view and your organisational liability. So if that's not in place, make sure that you do. We are working with organisations to make sure there's clear roles of responsibility and accountability in the organisation to protect you as you develop. I will always say that as you qualify as an advanced practitioner, that is very much the starting point of the journey, and the roles will continue to develop as you build that trust within the wider MDT and as you start to really expand that scope of what you're able to do by that pathway and workforce transformational space. So I suppose, as I'm not quite sure, Will, how long we were meant to have. Apologies if we've gone over. My first point would say, if you're not sure about this, please reach out to the regional faculties. I will send you a slide which has all of the emails so that you can start to kind of engage with us, and we'll help support you kind of navigate those business cases and that workforce transformation.
That's great. Thank you very much, Katie. And definitely not too long. It was really good. Really insightful to have all of you there as well. So thank you very much for coming along, especially so last minute. So if we just jump back one slide, sorry, Hannah. Perfect. Thank you. So Katie will hang around for questions at the end, I think. So if you've got any questions, please do direct them at Katie. And there's also pop them in the Q&A section of the at the bottom there. Thank you. So once again, what are we doing now at the college? So some of these questions have already come into the questions. I've also got some before we even started the call as well. So yes, we are collaborating. We are collaborating with Royal College of Occupational Therapy, with Coventry and Salford as a team, the 4 of us together, to reimagine pathways for advancing practice. So we want to focus this on community settings, as mentioned earlier, and focused on non-medical, sort of the non-typically medical model. So far, a lot of advancing practice courses and advanced practice courses have been typically more tied to that medical model. I think if we go back to when this all first started, it did start originally more with that nursing sort of medicalised front. But as we progressed, we've seen the importance, we've seen the great work that an advanced practitioner can do, and we also recognise what they could do in other areas as well. So we recognise as speech and language therapists, if we want to be equal to other health professionals, to nursing, to other colleagues in the health and care settings, we need to be able to progress to an advanced level in speech and language therapy as well. We've recognised that 60% of SLTs work in that community setting with children. So that has become a bit of a focus of ours. It's not entirely where we're focusing, but we really do want to create those opportunities in that area, because we just feel that, you know, creating that image for ourselves, establishing ourselves within the advanced practice space, enables us to then sort of become known in that section and develop into other clinical areas as well. It really lays the foundations. So hopefully this work with Coventry, Salford and RCOT will really help to do this. So far, a series of online events have been held, and basically members and attendees were encouraged to come along, give their thoughts, give their experiences, and provide their insight as well. I think we had nearly 300 people attend those so far, so that's had really, really good interest and take up so far. More information about this is available on the website, so please do follow the links I think Justina's been putting into the chat box and find those there as well. Obviously, we can't discuss advanced practice without mentioning prescribing. So we are in the same situation with prescribing, but we are constantly trying to advocate and develop opportunities within the prescribing sector. We are wary that prescribing is the greatest issue with carbon footprint for the NHS. We know the NHS have a desire and a drive to become carbon neutral, and prescribing medication is one of the biggest causes to prevent that. So there are benefits to not prescribing, but we also do know that it hinders us in practice as well. So we are continuing to campaign behind the scenes. Colleagues are actively working with other allied health professionals. We're united as a team, as one team, with the Prescribing Now campaign, and we're constantly looking out for more people to get involved. We're welcoming everybody. If you've got any information, if you'd like to share some stories, share some case studies, please do get in touch and we'd welcome it. More information about prescribing and so on can be found on the website as well. Could I have the next slide, please? So I'm going to bore you with this, but it is such a common question. What's the difference between enhanced and advanced practice? So I'm going to show it you there as well. And again, we've established that it's not that helpful because the text is too small. So I'll send this around instead, and I can also point you in the direction of where you'll be able to find this online on NHS England's website too. Could I have the next slide, please, Hannah? So as we'll have touched on already, we are a professional body for all 4 nations. We are not just for England, we are here for Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland as well. And we really want to make sure that you're equally considered in the development of any projects. Next slide, please. So as we know, this programme is funded by NHS England, but the outcomes of this will be used to inform the establishment of similar roles in each nation as well. As I say, really, really important that everything that we do is focused on each nation. And this is one of the reasons why the advanced work is focused, is taking an MSc approach rather than that apprenticeship route approach, because we understand that Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales do have different access, do have different places when it comes to apprenticeships. Therefore, we are actively working with colleagues in each nation. We're reviewing the opportunities that are available, and we're just also reviewing how we can adapt any outcomes of any of these projects to work for each nation as well. We've got Chief Allied Health Professional Officers from each nation working together to try and produce a joint statement about the creation of advancement practice AHP roles. We also know that colleagues in Scotland are reviewing a definition for advanced practice, and I say recently, not so long ago, a toolkit was added to Tourist, the platform for NHS colleagues in Scotland as well. Now, HEIW, or Health Education Improvement in Wales, recently, once again, I'm saying recently, not that long ago, released the EAC framework. So that's the Enhanced, Advanced and Consultant framework. We already think this is really positive that Wales is looking at these as that advancing practice area, that umbrella term, advancing practice for each of these roles. And I really think, as we said earlier on, showing that continuum, it shows people what they need to do to reach each level. And we think that is really, really important. We're also actively having conversations with people from Wales, looking at how we can adapt courses, how we can adapt what we've learned to work in Wales as well. So I know enhanced practice really isn't that far away from certain professionals in Wales already. And we'll just view how we can adapt that and continue to work with that. So I'd just like to hand over now to Sally, who's just going to wrap things up slightly for us, and then we'll move on to some Q&As as well.
Yes, thank you everyone, all our speakers and all of the question contributors. So we will be moving into the Q&A section of the webinar now. So I'd just like to give a caveat and a reminder that we do have far more questions than we do time, which is obviously wonderful to have such interest in all of this. So thank you so much for that. We won't get through them all today, but what we will do is be following up with an FAQs document after this webinar. So please don't worry if your question hasn't been answered today. We will be following up. And also thank you to the panelists who are answering the questions in real time in the Q&A box technology. Okay, so with that being said, we'll start on to the questions. I'm going to start with Kim and Louise, or Kim or Louise. So question around enhanced practice. If enhanced practice is a career path that I want to explore, what do managers need to know, or and what do they need to do to start off this process?
That's a really good question. And what's really great about it is you're starting to have those conversations. So a couple of areas to start exploring is the first thing to think about is how will it develop you as a person, and how will it contribute to effective delivery of care within that organisation? So really started to think about what will it do in terms of what will the impact be, because once you've really established how it's going to develop you and how it's going to enhance the services that are provided, you can start to look for a programme that will meet your needs. Now, my suggestion is that you have a few questions to ask of any provider of education for enhanced practice, because it's a bit like buying a car. You've got to go in knowing what it is your important features of what they look like, because all of the programs are written in very different ways. So that my first thing would be about how will that program support your profession-specific learning? That would be the first question. So working with your manager to really start exploring what those courses are and whether they'll meet your specific needs as a speech and language therapist. The second question that I would ask of that is, how will it develop my practice in a particular area? So again, what is it that course will enable you to learn and develop further as a speech and language therapist? And then the third question I would ask is, what support will be in my workplace to enable to meet all of the requirements of enhanced level practice? And how will I be supported to develop those beyond clinical practice? So thinking about your opportunity to develop your education pillars, your leadership pillars, and your research pillars in an integrated way. So go in, have that fantastic question, but really think about what will the impact be for me, and what will the impact be on how I deliver care services to the people that are within my setting, and then find the course that really is going to drive that forward for you.
Yeah, totally agree. And I would just say part of the big driver behind enhanced practice is that we absolutely embrace everything that is really special about your profession. It cannot be a generic mush, as Bev would describe it. It needs to be really profession specific. So what is going to bring out your profession specific skills and support you? And that's what you need to find in an education pathway.
Lovely, thank you both. I'm going to go to you next, Katie, if that's okay. And we've got quite a few questions around you know, how soon this will impact on staff, and how they can kind of get buy-in. So I might come to you with a couple of questions if that's okay. So first of all, someone's asked how they can get buy-in from NHS trusts, as often practitioners are told they don't have funding, there's no money available, or the NHS trusts kind of buy in a lot cheaper specialist roles.
Yeah, so that's one of the big pieces of work that we're looking at doing with the professional bodies, is it's demonstrating the impact of advanced level practice. You have to outlay costs to then see the benefit of that going forward. We know that all organisations in financial issues and headcount cuts at the moment, so we know that is an issue. So what we're trying to do is, with the case studies, demonstrate the impact. There is a piece of work on, and I have put in the chat, the Centre for Advancing Practice website. Within the Southwest region, they have done a really good piece of work about workforce transformation and emerging areas of advanced practice roles. It actually has a prioritisation framework, and it enables you to work through that development of a business case to show the impact. So it would be really worthwhile looking through with that, looking through with your service directors, your line managers, to then consider where it would have the greatest impact, because that's where you get the buy-in, that's where you get the business case, and it's where you're going to get your funding. So we know it's an issue. I always say, whenever obviously I've worked at advanced and consultant level practice, just don't ever go in with a blank piece of form. Your service directors, your line managers do not have the capacity to look at workforce transformation. You will have to drive this a little bit yourself. You need to think about, you know, your service, you know where the gaps are, you know where the issues are, and what actually these roles with the training could really make that impact. You need to be able to sell that. As part of the skills of being an advanced practitioner is being able to do that leadership, that negotiation, that development. So if you can do that, you're well on your way to be able to fit within one of these roles. So I'd love to say that we're in the position where we possibly are, and I've tried to dispel the ACP advanced practice myth that's there, is we know that at that front door, the ED, the ACCP, the UTCs, the roles are well known. They're established within your organisations. They are accepted by the MDTs, and they are grown and developed. Our professions in the HPs is not as well known. So we are looking at how do we support from the chief HPs, from the professional bodies, from us as regional faculties, to ensure that actually there is that wider understanding. But it is much more in its infancy. But that's where we have the potential and the growth. So we are working in the background. We know it's not that easy. It's also worth looking on the website, because there are podcasts and there are already some case studies that are on there from SLT practitioners who are at an advanced level. So again, it might help just build that understanding with your line managers.
Lovely, thanks, Katie. And I see some of the questions around some of this are still getting answered live, so that's great, thank you. I'm going to follow on from that and go to Judith and kind of pivot from the NHS and ask if around how this helps with the number of SLTs that work outside of the NHS, for example, in independent practice, and how they may be supported.
I saw this question, thank you, Sally. I saw this question in the chat, and I thought RCSLT is so aware that many members work portfolio careers and work one foot in the NHS, one foot out of the NHS, an increasing number work in independent practice. I think what Katie said is really helpful. This is a very new world in which we work. We need to work out as a profession whether or not we are doing this to only enhance our development, or is it that we want the extra funding? So I think in terms of your personal development as an individual, it is well worth mapping where you are in the professional development framework, and to see whether going to chase, if you like, getting the funding to actually deliver into an AP role will actually help you personally and professionally. Because it is so new, I am hoping that these roles will be really supportive for us to really develop as a profession, especially in areas where the real expertise may not have been recognised before now. We're thinking about places like in children and young people services, in justice, in mental health, areas where we know the skills are significant, but there hasn't been a structure in which to acknowledge it. So I know it sounds like I'm fudging this. I think the opportunity is to ensure that all members have access to the same amount of learning, and access of these courses is, of course, really significant. The challenge, I think, with independent practitioners is what I think all our, especially our external participants have suggested, is around that supervision piece. Because as part of both the enhanced practice apprenticeship and the advanced practice roles, we need to ensure that the individual has significant and appropriate supervision, which I think is probably easier to source, and I'm more than happy to hear whether that's true or not, within an NHS framework where they understand these roles, than in an independent space. However, because this is a growing and evolving piece of work, I think it's something that we need to add to our list of things to consider and work with people like you as independent practitioners and RCSLT to see how, as this grows, we can ensure that it is for the whole membership. So I hope that helps answer that question. Thanks, Sally.
Lovely, thanks Judith, and don't mute just yet. I'm going to stick with you for the next one. So there's a question around what about existing roles that are in theory at this level, or I guess in practice at this level, and how those get recognised versus having new posts being created ostensibly at this level?
I'm not sure. I'm more than happy to have a go at answering it, but I wonder whether someone like Katie or Will might be better at answering this. I'm thinking that the e-portfolio route might be something to consider, where you can use your accumulated knowledge and skills to start evidencing against the framework. But I just wondered whether...
Yeah, I completely agree. So that's why we've got both pathways, is for the recognition of our current workforce. So again, with the e-portfolio route, there's an expressions of interest. Again, it's on the website. You do need to have, again, line manager support, but we then put you through a funded route where you get that educational supervision to be able to learn needs analysis, see how you map against the 38 capabilities. But there's funding there if there are gaps, recognising that, yes, the goalposts have changed since 2017 when that more professional framework has come in. So there's funding there to support any gaps across those 4 pillars to enable you to then develop, submit your portfolio. And it isn't an easy route, we have been told that, but you have to understand that it is recognition of the education equivalence of a master's, an advanced practice master's. So it has to be robust, but that's what it's given you from an AHSE point of view, from a recognition that you've got the underpin education and training as someone who's coming out of an advanced practice accredited master's programme. So if you are in those roles, it would be a case of having a look through. And the other thing is, again, because again we are aware of that change in requirements, if for any reason it's deemed that you need more support and you can't submit within that 12 months, you're then given a really robust development plan with the education provider to come back to your line manager and us as faculty leads to then go, okay, what's the development stuff that I need to then be ready to then submit. So it's not a no, even if you don't admit it, it's that development opportunities to be able to open up those conversations.
Lovely, thank you so much, Katie. And I think we've got just about time for one more, but as I said, don't worry, the other ones will be followed up on after this. So Kim and Louise, how do you envisage the concept of enhanced practice will impact on practice in terms of expectations on staff?
That's a big question, isn't it? So I guess I'm not sure how to answer that, because there's so many different ways you might look at that. I think for me, the reason that enhanced practice is so important is about retention, because actually we see a lot of people leaving their roles post-qualification at kind of about year 3 to 5. And some of the reason for that is that professional development piece, about really having access to high quality professional development. And for me, that's the impact from a positive point of view. This is about developing you in your role as a registrant in that profession. It's about equipping our middle point of the workforce, who are the biggest workforce, to really develop their profession specific knowledge, skills and expertise. But they also have a really significant impact on the quality of care, in terms of leading change and really understanding what it is and how we can respond to our population's needs. So for me, I think it's really exciting. It gives this middle point of our career such a clear purpose. But I think it's for you as a profession, as employers of speech and language therapists, as one yourself, to really think about, what do I want from this? What can I gain from this that will have a positive impact on me as a person, but also the people that I work with? But there's also about that thinking about the next steps piece that comes with this is the more assured we are in our own role, in our own professional identity, as we move up through our profession and through different roles that become a multi-professional role, the easier it is to navigate those spaces that are highly complex and difficult and uncertain. So when we enter spaces like advanced level practice, if we're confident and have that really sound grounding in deep profession-specific learning, it makes that transition a little bit easier and a little bit less conflicted in a multi-professional space. So for me, it's about the long game, and we're not there yet with everything. It's a process of learning we're all going through. So for me, it's about that there is so much that you will gain out of this, both for yourself, for the person and the people that you serve within your profession, but also as a profession, how you grow.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kim, for providing such a great answer to such a big question in such a short amount of time. Thank you so much to the panel and to our attendees for those great questions. I'm going to hand over to Judith to bring this to a close.
Yeah, thank you, Sally, and thank you to everybody that's contributed to what I think has been a fabulous webinar. I'd particularly like to thank our external contributors, so that's Kim, Louise, Bev and Katie, but also to Will for really coordinating this so beautifully, to Sally for her help with the Q&A, and of course we couldn't do it without Justina and Hannah behind the scenes. I really think what this has proved is this is the beginning of a conversation, and I hope at least we've sown some seeds for you today about how this is evolving, and once we have landed the pieces we need to do at RCSLT and with your help, then we can really start thinking about the so what bit, what next, and how we can actually start delivering this on the ground. So could I just have the next slide, please? And then again, so we really would love to hear what you found useful in this webinar and what we could do better next time. So be really grateful if you wouldn't mind responding by scanning this QR code. I think that's also going out into the email that you'll get after this webinar. And we'd really like to thank you for everything that you have contributed here and in your fabulous Q&A, which I've been reading through. Please do get in touch with us if you've got any more questions, and we look forward to continuing to work with you, and thank you all for your time. I think there's one final slide, isn't there, to say thank you, if I'm right. Lovely. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time, and we'll sign off now. Thanks then. Bye-bye all.